God, I love that jingle. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Cult of Recreationalism podcast. I'm your host, Sean Lake, and today on the show we've got a very special guest, none other than Kris Paronto. Some things to know about Kris. He's a former Army Ranger from the 2nd Battalion and 75th Regiment. He was one of the responders to the 2012 Benghazi terror attacks. He's an author of The Ranger Way and The Patriot's Creed, and of course lent a heavy hand in the book 13 Hours. Founder of the 14th Hour Foundation, owner of Battle Line Tactical, which we're going to have to learn more about that. He's the co-host of the Battle Line podcast, also a motivational and public speaker. I don't think you want to be on the other side of that bullhorn, just saying. And he's also the co-owner of Tanto vodka. So Tanto vodka is a whole subject we're also going to talk about, and how that ties into motivational public speaking. I don't know where the connection is there, but we're going to find out. Kris, welcome to the Cult of Recreationalism.
Yeah. Dude, I love that. I'm a Sinatra fan, man. Just the dark, dingy lounges. I wish I could sit in a lounge listening to Dean Martin and just drink, because that's where I'm like, man, I wish I had a little martini in my hand right now when you're playing that jingle. That was cool.
You know what to put in the martini, and that is your own vodka. In fact, I'm going to start right there. How in God's green earth did you get into producing American vodka and go to market?
I wish there was some cool. Actually, it is a cool story. Cause nothing that I've got into all those. And thank you for putting all that out there, man. I didn't realize I had so much going on, to be honest with you, because you just kind of do it. And you know how it is. You just entrepreneurship. It just kind of happens, and let's do it for the experience. And then if it works out, well, great. But if it doesn't, well, that was a heck of an experience. And that's what it was with the vodka. My partner, who's from 1st Ranger Battalion, his name's Ben Morgan. Great guy. Him and I grew up together in Colorado. He joined 1st Ranger Bat. I went to 2nd, and we spent time with 19 Special Forces together. Well, he came to me when we were training, and we were training with Battle Line Tactical. He's one of the instructors that I use, one of my main ones. And he's like, hey, this guy in Georgia, he's a Vietnam vet, and he was a moonshiner, and he wants to do a whiskey with you. And I'm like, Ben, man, come on. I don't know. I mean, there's like 8 million whiskeys out there. That's like Johnny come lately. I don't want to do that kind of, that's what vet bros do, right? It's a bro vet thing. A vet bro, let's go do a whiskey or a bourbon.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And he's like, okay. And then I think he went back to the guy. It was actually the original distiller was in Georgia called Dalton Distillery. He went back to the Vietnam vet, the gentleman, and he said, hey, well, can you do vodka? And I said, well, yeah, I can do whatever you want. And he came back to me, and Ben's a heck of a salesman. I love Ben. He's one of my best friends, but man,
somewhere there was a no, and Ben got you to say yes, so obviously he's good.
He just keeps coming back, He's that Tommy Boy, old Tommy Boy line where he said you could sell like ketchup popsicle to a woman in white glove. That's Ben. And he did, and I did. I think I told him no like 4 times. Just back in the early days when 13 Hours came out, I didn't want to be a public figure. You and I have had this conversation.
Right? Oh yeah.
It's not comfortable. That's not what you do. Now it's the thing to do. But I'm already out there enough. I feel kind of like a big douchebag enough, having social media. It's not what I signed up for, and. Yeah, because he's my best friend, and it really is. He's my best friend. I have a lot of best friends. I do. When I say a lot, 5, that's a lot. But he is one of those guys I grew up with that I trust immensely, trust with my life, trust with my family. He's like, man, come on, let's do it together. And that was what sold me. It was, I'm going to do it with my friend. It'd be the same,
okay.
And it'd be the same, I would think, if you and Glen decided to do something and Glen kept hitting you and you're like, no, or I think probably the other way around. You kept hitting Glen and he said, no. But eventually he's going to say yes because of that friendship. Yeah. And that's what it was. And it was something different. He's like, well, let's do the vodka. And I'm like, okay, let's give it a try. And that was 4 years ago, almost 5 years ago. And I don't think people realize that. We had the vodka, but we've had a lot of, but I think anything that you do successfully, you have to work at. You have to.
It does not. The perception could be, oh my God, everyone listening to this podcast is like, oh, he's got this giant, raging, successful vodka company. And you might be like, no, man, I am 5 years in and you're just hearing about this now.
Yep.
I could say the same thing about Bubs. Like, we're 6 years in, and I got folks every day. They're like, "Oh, I never knew you guys were out there." And I'm like, "Well, that's both the problem and the opportunity."
It is. You got to look at it that way. It's well, dang it. I guess I'm not promoting it well enough. But then also, hey, well, I can promote it to you and get it out there. And but I think that's how companies become successful. You're right, and it doesn't happen overnight. And it didn't. And we learned we had some bumps in the road. Got them. You spend a lot of money. You got to have the alcohol business. And if you're going to be anywhere, a producer or a seller or anything, it does take money. Lawyer fees, lawyers cost money, guys. And I learned the hard way. You do need them. And when you become when you become a public figure and you have some notoriety, but without getting into those weeds, unless you want to ask about it, but I don't want to get into too much. But I can.
But you and I could offline about lawyers' fees, and the ones that are painful to pay for, and then the necessary ones, and we're going to be finishing each other's sentences. So, takeaway for the audience: if you have the inspiration to start any kind of a brand, doing anything, and this isn't meant to be an entrepreneur's guideline podcast. However, lawyer up. If there's one line item you spend money on, it's good contracts, good manufacturing agreements, good partnership agreements. Because I've watched friendships go down the drain
right there
with bad agreements in place. So there's that old expression about how fences make good neighbors, and that couldn't be more true in the world of business. Just build a good fence. Everyone knows where they live, and whenever there's ambiguity, that fence line's there to help you solve for that. So I have no doubt
it does. You're spot on. And I've even personally had friends where there wasn't an agreement in place, but it was we're buddies, right? Hey, and that veterans, we do that a lot. That's the thing that we trust people with our lives, or I should say military, and then when we become veterans, that we think it's going to carry over, and it doesn't even carry over sometimes even within the Brotherhood. It doesn't, and there's horror stories with that out there, and it happened to me a couple of times. But getting with that, Ben, we did make sure after learning that alcohol business, it differs in every state. If you want to sell in one state, you have to have a distributor in that state that doesn't always carries over to the other state. Then you have to have an alcohol store and alcohol outlet, and they may not be with that distributor in that state, and we have to find another. And it is a lot of work, and God bless Ben. He busted his ass. I mean, I'm the face of the operation as much as this mitt face can be a face anymore. But Ben busted his ass, and and eventually we did move our distillery. We moved 8 from the Dalton distillery in Georgia to Colorado Springs because that's where Ben lives, and we had more control. And it did come to that. It's like we just need more oversight. We need more control. We need to know what's going on because the distillery, nothing against Dalton, they make tremendous alcohol. They do a great job, but we weren't getting the information that we needed. And if two Rangers, we need the information. We do want to be in control, man. That's just how we are.
Listen, I got one friend who's a Ranger outside of you, and his name's Jason McCarthy, and he runs a little company called Go Ruck. And if there's one thing that is written all across his face, it's knowing what the hell's going on and being in control of that. That's it. So if you're running a company like that, man, whether it's logistics, pack shelves, like whatever you got to deal with, like, hey, what do my cases look like? Like, what's the finished product? How do they get screened on? Who did the artwork? Like, is everything label compliant?
That is, and that's something I didn't know. That's a huge thing, right? Just the boxes. The first set of boxes that went out were just white standard cardboard boxes. Well, that's not good shelf advertisement. That's not, and we didn't know. We had nobody telling us how to do it. And I hate to say it, but some of us veterans, we screw each other over, and Black Rifle Coffee wasn't calling us and saying, well, this is how we did Lead Slinger. Even though I'm friends with Evan, I used to be friends with Evan and Matt. They thought, hey, this is how you do it. It's like, Jesus, and that's what I found out. It's cutthroat. It really is not with some companies.
It absolutely can be, and there's something to be said about that because I'm in a part of a lot of groups, and these groups are designed to share information. By the way, anyone who tuned into this podcast, we're going immediately hard left on what I thought we were going to talk about, but this is worth unpacking a little bit. that brotherhood is something we're going to talk about more in terms of that reliance on each other in obviously very serious situations. At the same time, the translation into civilian life is something that's not guaranteed. And it's not for lack of goodwill. I don't think it's for that there's nefarious bad actors out there. I think there's a level of unknown and unknowables that translates into the civilian world, and that brotherhood isn't there 100% intact the way it was during active duty.
Correct.
And you start to see behavior patterns where you're like, wow, that's not what I expected. And there's a larger sense of betrayal when it comes from that world. Like if I'm in a brotherhood and I've got a guy who will literally lay down his life for me and vice versa, well, the moment we're civilians and hey, this business opportunity comes up and he's in packaging and I need a packaging guy. Well, he used to have my ass covered and I go to him, but he's running his whole business and maybe he doesn't exactly know what he's doing over there. He's got some uncertainties and all of a sudden you get the short end of the stick and you're like, hey man, I had a level of expectation going into this. Well, maybe the contracts weren't buttoned up. Maybe things were done on a handshake. Maybe he got busy. Maybe he's scared. Like there's so many things you just don't know about that all of a sudden that brotherhood doesn't translate.
And I'll say it just, and a lot of people out there can hit me on if they want. It's sometimes it's the competition too, and you don't want to think that because we want everybody to succeed, right? But unless you're doing something that is competing against me and my livelihood, and that is just business per se, and it doesn't transcend. I mean, it doesn't transcend over the veterans world. It's there as well. It's business is business, and you really do have to dig deep down and be like, okay, if I'm going to help somebody, that might cut in my bottom line, and we forget that. Well, that's what we used to do as vets. That's what we thought. That's what integrity was. That's what the Army values were, right? Well, let's do the same thing here, and some do. I'm gonna say all do. All are dickheads. Excuse my language. We're gonna beep that out. Sorry, YouTube, if we've got to do that. But there are still some out there that say, I'll help you. I'll help you navigate these rough waters. And we just didn't get that. And I'm not complaining, no victim at all. We didn't expect that either. It would have been nice to have it, but we didn't, and we had to learn. And Ben, like I said, Ben's awesome. He learned, he's the brain, definitely. He learned what we needed to do, and he's like, well, you know what? Come 4 years now, he's like, there's a distillery in Colorado Springs. They're right by my house. I'm going to go talk to him. He ended up going and talking to him, and they gave him this is how awesome Ben is. They gave him a job. They gave him the job to oversee the whole veteran market of alcohol that they do. Though everybody that is related to military, dude, how did
amazing.
you walk
He's like,
in there and get a job?
Like,
You're just supposed to see if they do our vodka. He's like, well,
yes, they do. In fact, I sold them this ketchup popsicle too. They were wearing white gloves. It was 90 degrees outside, but damn, dude, they wanted that popsicle bad.
He did it.
Oh,
it was so hilarious.
That's
what I saw Tommy Boy again in my head, and I was like, well, did you at least get him to make our vodka? He goes, oh yeah, they're going to make our vodka. They're going to make a lot of it, and also I'm in charge of sales of all their veteran run alcohol that they do. And the Lord works in mysterious ways, brother. And I really do that. And I'm the worst Christian in the world, guys. I'm a huge Christian, but I'm terrible. I do my best. I sin every day. I say my Hail Marys and ask for forgiveness. But I really do believe that was the route. It's like anything. It's the same route that we get to be in the Rangers or SEALs, right? We're going to make mistakes and fail. And do we quit? No, you keep pressing on. Let's learn from it, press on. And eventually we got with Black Hat Distillery. Yeah, exactly. It got with Black Hat Distillery, and that's where we are now. And Black Hat actually has a huge sales team. Black Hat actually they're the biggest distiller in Colorado. We didn't know this either. It wasn't like he went to him and said, this is the guys. They just happened to be in Colorado Springs where he lived, and they are the biggest distillery in Colorado. And it's been night and day difference. I mean, it was going to Black Hat, and And I can say this now because I believe when's this episode being aired? I gotta be careful because we have to do a big announcement.
We're talking June end of June. I want to say at the earliest. In fact, you might even say, Sean, make it July 4th, and I'll push it out a little bit.
Yeah, make it July 4th. That'll be perfect because I think that's when we're going to be there. But the distillery, after we got it all done, the vodka, we did, they have a whole marketing team and artists that we're not artists, which going back to the first logo, which I still love that first logo, it was drawn by Ben's daughter when she was 13 years old. She knew what this was, but then she just drew it and we're like, that is perfect. And it's family. And it's just it's not just a liquor logo. There's meaning behind it, not just this. And, we've got the blacked out stars for Bub and Roan, of course. And then the flag because of the military. But when we got the black hat, they're like, hey, we like it, but we've got to make it. And they were being very, very nice, being very courteous. They weren't going to be disrespectful because they knew what it meant, knew that his daughter, but we need to make it, so it pops more. And I got that. It made sense. So,
yep.
Now we've got the Rangers lead the way on it because Ben and I are both from the 75th Ranger Regiment. We've got, of course, the flag and still got the blacked out stars for Roan and Bub to remember it. We've got the scroll on the bottom because of the Ranger scroll. For those that don't know, if you got your Ranger tab, you've been to Ranger school. If you got your Ranger school scroll, that's the way of life. That's the Ranger Regiment. If you got both, well, then you're we would call a real Ranger. You've been to Ranger school, you're in leadership, and you're serving at the Ranger Regiment. So there is a hierarchy there. But
I have in every branch. In every branch. I will never know those nuances. I'll be always on that outside looking in, being like, "Oh, that's cool." That's cool. But there's cooler than cool, and then there's actually the coolest. But you know what? You're not on the inside, so you don't know.
Don't worry. If you know, you know. But that's the whole bottle, and then getting the DUI, the Ranger Distinguished Unit Insignia, that DUI, the shield, which was born from Merrill's Marauders back in the 5307 composite, back in the jungles. There's a lot that and then even just the gold that's on there now, because to me, this is like a retirement. The gold was, to me, I was like, you got to put gold on there, not just because it's gold and looks cool, because that's a sunset, and that's what I picture now. After all this shit that we've been through, Ben, the Iraqs, the Afghanistans, the going through this just to get the vodka here, the business side, the suings, the mediations, everything that went, the everything. It's like, I just picture me and you sitting on a beach in Adirondack chairs with vodka and Sprite with the lime in it, and that's the sunset, man. On Naples, Florida. I said Naples, Florida, looking over, that's the sunset, and that's why we need the gold on there. So it really took on even a new life when we actually got people that knew, professional artists and designers making it, and that's essentially where it's at now. And now we're going to I'm sorry, Sean, the distillery. And I was getting into, when we first got on the distillery, they're like, hey, do you want to go to Texas and meet with the owners of Specs Liquor? And I'm like, Specs Liquor, Texas? You mean like the biggest liquor store in the state of Texas? The biggest one? They're like, yeah. I said, the Bunny Rabbit Specs? They said, yeah. Do you want to go? Because we're going to see if we can get you in there. And I was like, we just met. All right, well, let's go. And we flew to Houston, met with Specs, and me, I can talk to anybody. I'm not intimidated to talk to anybody. But we walk in.
You're going to roll into that room, and you're going to have a conversation.
And if it goes, it goes. If it doesn't, you ain't shooting at me. You're not trying to blow me up. Let's talk. And it's Texas. I mean, come on. They support the military, first responders, veterans. They love. So going in there and talking, he was a wonderful man, just a gentleman. And it was, and this is it. This is why, this is what we're doing. This is where we're at now. And here's the sales guys. They can talk the sales stuff. That's not my lane. So you ask them those questions, but whatever you need, I can do. And I think that's also what we get from that special operations community. It doesn't matter if you're a PJ, SEAL, or Ranger. It's just like, hey, you just tell me what you need done. I'll get it done. Yeah. And we ended up getting that, and now it's we're steamrolling into other states. So
now, when this podcast airs, and you listen to this, and you live in Texas, because a ton of our customer base does, now you know where to go. Mm-hmm. Now you roll over there. Now I'll say this to other customers who maybe live in the great state of Massachusetts, which is an underestimated patriotic state, where
They
you will
are.
see more
They are.
American flags in front of houses of this very blue state, where patriotism runs deep in that blood, and say that I know that Tanto vodka would be very well received in New England because those folks can drink, and I'm going to help you out with that.
But
So
I can't believe you're just saying that, because that's actually who we're talking to right now is Massachusetts. They're also doing a shooting. They want the distillery and the marketing team's like, hey, do you want to go do a 1-day shoot in Massachusetts? Like, yeah, let's do it, because they want to bring your vodka in, but they want to do an event. I'm like, well, yeah, it's Cape Gun Club, Loudonberry. It's at the Loudonberry. It's the nature preserve, but they have a gun out. It's out west, beautiful place. But man, if you can help with that, Sean, let's do it.
I'm gonna put one guideline out there, and the first one is going to be shoot first, vodka later. That's it. That's all I got to say on that.
Thank you. Shoot and drink responsibly. That'll be our saying. That's not copyrighted, because I'm putting the shoot in there. I can say that.
We're covering that right now. Shoot and drink responsibly. There's a T-shirt. We're gonna circle up on this offline, and I'm gonna totally shift gears on you right now.
Yeah, cool.
I want to get in a little bit of history, because I think history informs. So, like what we've already talked about, like lessons learned, after leaving the service, lessons learned in entrepreneurship. It all starts somewhere. So first question, real baseline, where are you from?
Oh, well, originally from Colorado, Alamosa, Colorado. Dad was a football coach. I grew up around athletics my whole life. Dad was the head football coach in athletic director at Adams State, and then we moved when he got a job at Brigham Young University. And that was looking back now in my adolescent years, or just say my early years, that was a wonderful experience, because I got to be around coaches like LaVell Edwards. Andy Reid was a graduate assistant when I was playing around LaVell Edwards, Mike Holmgren, who won the Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers. Andy Reid was a peon graduate assistant, and I'm catching passes from Jim McMahon and Steve Young, and it was an environment that was extremely positive, with a lot of father figures around that I think by osmosis I was getting. And also seeing the hard work, because you have these guys that became Hall of Famers that I'm sitting there just playing on the field playing catch with, and just watching them practice, and it was amazing, and it really did shape me down the line, being around those people, being around all of them. But then we went to Oregon State. He got a job there, so we moved to Oregon State, and then back to Colorado, and I played football at Grand Junction Central High School. Played all sports actually. I spent another 4 years there playing football it was called Mesa College at the time. Now it's called Colorado Mesa University. So my whole beginning of my life was athletics. It was all sports. It was football throughout. That's how I paid for college, but I played baseball, basketball. I ran track as well. We were 4x400 state champions my junior year. That just was life. That's what I thought life was, which is wonderful. Wonderful. It's just athletics. But you also got me in a little bit of trouble, because you're an alpha beta. If you've seen Revenge of the Nerds, that's what you're an alpha beta, man.
Look, you said Adams College, and I was about to make a reference to the Atoms.
Adams. That's right, Adams. Yes. That's so funny.
You were giving me a layup, but I was like, all right, how many people have actually watched this movie to understand the Adams reference? I just let it slide.
We are old, though, man. You got to, I guess probably the youngsters haven't seen that, but they need to. Back when movies were good, when they were excellent, man, when they had Booger and Hair Pie and all that. Can I say that again? Am I going way too far again?
Pan down, more Bush. And you're like, wait a second.
Pan down. We've got, that was like the saying back in high school. We've got Bush.
That was it. And literally, you would be sued. You cannot do that. That was like such the norm that is like, no. And all extra no's. All right, so sports is interwoven in your whole life. So is religion.
Yeah.
And of course, I imagine that was interesting, spending a few years at BYU down in Provo, Utah, which is your 95% Mormon population, and coming there as a Catholic, you must have been like, do we get a church in this town, or we got to like fly somewhere?
Oh, it was. I think what helped us, because it is a huge LDS, of course, LDS community. And LDS is Christian. Yeah, they have their own set of, I think they treated us wonderfully, maybe even more so. And I never saw them treat non-LDS or non-Mormons badly. I never saw that grounds growing up. I never saw that in school. Nobody made fun of each other. There wasn't bullying, like, haha, you're not Mormon. Never saw that, guys. So I if that happened, well, I never experienced it. But also, when your dad is coaching at Brigham Young University, they kind of look past that as well. It's like, well, because not all the coaches are Mormon. Mike Holmgren wasn't Mormon. The Holmgrens, and for again, search guys. I think he's in the Hall of Fame now as an NFL football coach when he was with the Packers, and then he's the owner of the Seahawks right now. But we did know that we were different, and we actually became Episcopalian, which is Catholic light. It's the same thing, guys. My mom and dad just didn't want to believe in the Pope anymore. But it's the same ceremonies, and you could say it's Protestant, but when I went through the Catholic Church or the Catholic Mass or Episcopalian Masses, was this dang same thing. We did the same thing.
Yeah.
But it just was one of those things where no, I knew I was not Mormon because I didn't go to church on Sunday for 5 hours, so I knew that. But being in the athletic, and I think that's where athletics also you gain acceptance. And as kids, I always recommend, hey, go play sports, because I was an athlete. I was a competitive athlete with everybody in town, and my dad coached at Brigham Young, so it was, well, he's not Mormon, but he's nice to everybody. He's plays sports and he makes our teams better, and his dad is at BYU, so he's okay.
And you've got a theme that's woven. But I did know. Sorry, I would say you've got a theme woven throughout here, where it's like, you've got connections and teamwork. You have religion, like whether you're part of that group or not. That's just sort of an interesting way to be, on the outside of a very tight knit group, but yet accepted by them and be a part of it. And, hey, football does help with that, but the idea of teamwork, right? Like, you've got your clan, you've got your tribe, and that was in sports throughout, and then that obviously translated into military, which we'll talk about here shortly. And I think, personally, as a father of a 6 and an 8-year-old, the idea of team sports and the values that are taught in there, the sense of responsibility, accountability, the opportunity to level up, to help your teammates out, you got to instill that at a very young age. And look, if the sports stick, they stick. It's going to be one thing or another. Like, that's up for grabs. What's not up for grabs is the commitment to others. And I think that, you learn that throughout your whole life, and instilling those values through football. I mean, it's hard knocks, but that's life. Life is hard knocks. And I love that you've had that, because that definitely informed. So when you were getting done, did you go have a 4-year ride at Mesa to play ball and cover your tuition?
I did. I had a little bit of bump there though too. When I was telling the story here, I omitted this, but I'll tell you, my first year at Mesa, I failed out, and I had to go to a junior college called Dixie Junior College. They've changed their names because of wokeness. We were called the Dixie Rebels. I will always be a Dixie Rebel, but because of today's society, can't be called Dixie Rebels. I think they're called the Utah Valley something. I don't know, but I'm always a Dixie Rebel. And again, another blessing. I failed everything. So I lost my scholarship. I still wanted to play ball. I knew of Dixie, and I knew it was in St. George, Utah, which is outside of Las Vegas, just a little bit outside Las Vegas on the Nevada border. And I wrote the coach, and it was like, my dad's like, well, what are you going to do? I wrote the coach, say, hey, Coach Croshaw, I love that guy. Love him. I said, Coach Crow, you don't know me, but I want to come play for you. Can I kind of get my grades up? And I did it. He said, well, you can come walk on. I walked on. I got my scholarship that semester because it was taught in me as a young age, you just work your ass off. Somebody's going to notice you if you put the work in, and he did. And I actually was a junior college All-American for 2 years. But it was one of those things where it's like lemons, getting a bunch of lemons and making lemonade, and having that opportunity that somebody was willing to say, okay, I know you got a 0.0 grade point average. You're not getting any recommendations from your coach because you're a freshman, you didn't do anything. Come on anyway. And Dixie was kind of that place, because Dixie took the kids the gangsters from UNLV. Yeah, they're from Vegas. They took all the people, all the Polynesian guys, all the Polynesians, the Tongan Crip gangsters that needed to get their grades up to go to BYU in Utah. We had all them, and then we had the farm boys from Southern Utah. So I wrote about it actually in the Ranger Way. I wrote it. It was amazing. That was an amazing experience on itself because I came in, and I'm this little Hispanic, white Hispanic, huevito kid from Grand Junction, Colorado. I mean, we got some gangs, but I'm not in those things. That's not my world. And I come in and run my locker. I've got a Donner Street Crip right here from Vegas, and then on the other side, I got a West Coast Blood, and then there's a Tongan Crip gangster. And these guys, to me, you watch the movies, and you're in Southern California, you're like, these guys, if they're on the streets, and this is my impression. It is a stereotype, but it's not. But it was, man, why aren't these guys killing each other? I couldn't believe it. I was like, and I had a hard time believing that I was here. It's like, look at all these gangsters and all these big time players that need to get their grades. And I remember we went out to practice, and we were awesome. We were amazing football. I mean, it was like we could have beat some D1s. I remember though, one day I asked a guy. His name was Chucky, and he was our free safety. He was the fastest dude I ever played. He ran like a 4.3 40. He was a Donner Street Crip, and I got the balls to ask him one day, my sophomore year. I said, "Hey, dude, you and Stacy was one of our linebackers. He was a West Coast Blood. He was like I can't which Piru Street I couldn't remember, but I remember I asked Chuck. I go, how come you guys aren't killing each other? And I don't know. I think it's the just being an innocent and not the naivety of not knowing. That's probably not something you need to ask a gangster. But Chucky was cool with me. He was really cool, and I think also because I was whenever there was I was one of the best players on the team, but we had a ton of best players on the team, so that's not saying much. But he goes, Kris, he goes, well, he said, brother, he goes, it's because I just want to win. He goes, we don't care here. He said, on the street, I'm going to kill him. I'm going to shoot him. But here, we just want to win. That stuck with me when I joined the Army. And then especially with GRS and even that night in Benghazi, because you don't all get along. Yeah. None of it. I mean, there's a lot of attitudes there. But Chucky, what he said, we just want to win. That stuck with me because, like, okay, you got to put your shit aside. If these guys are willing to kill each other on the street and then they put their shit aside to win, and we did win. We won a lot. We were really good. Those words what was I, 18 at the time, 18 or 19, that stuck with me just as much as the words I had from Stanley McChrystal when he was a battalion commander for me at Ranger Battalion, or when I was working and we had Chris Wood as our CIA station chief in Kabul. From Chucky, the gangster, the kid gangster, that stuck with me and resonated with me forever. So it's a blessing that I did get kicked out of school, that I had to go through that I got to experience playing ball. And I did eventually got my grades up, and I went back and finished out my full ride at Mesa College and did well.
I mean, look, you had to get that kick in the ass. You had to get knocked down into the gutter, pick yourself back up. You had to show a level of, tenacity, be like, well, do I want to give this up? No, I want to play ball. Here's this little college. Who knew that you were going to go down there, be stuck in the middle of gang life and like all these different like subcultures of misfits that couldn't get into their main D1 schools or main schools. And yet from that, a brotherhood of itself is formed, another tribe, another community that, it doesn't translate out on the streets. In that setting, in that space, and I would argue that will transcend some of those street beefs to be like, no, like this guy wants to win with me. He's got my back.
Yeah, it did.
All right.
Well, it did definitely.
So then, you finished out your ride. You learned a lot along the way, and damn it if you didn't want to win. Then tell me about service. Like, how did you find the Army? How did you find the Rangers? Like, that's not your average path.
I think like any of us that join, unless you're going to be a Marine and you're going to be a Marine forever, that's what you want to be when you're 12. If you're going into the SEALs or Rangers, it kind of finds you. You don't find it. It kind of just searches you out, and it does. I only think the only people that ever really thought they wanted to be in the military and did exactly that from the time they were 8 until is a Marine. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that's usually the stories. With me, I didn't know what I was going to do. I mean, I'm 5'9", 180 pounds. I did have a scout from the Broncos and a scout from the Vikings came out and ran me, and I ran a 4.7. There's no way. I mean, yeah, if I'm 6'5", 250 pounds running a 4.7, I'll go to the pros. 5'9", 180, no, not going to the pros with that. So football's done, and I'll be quite honest, Sean. I was burnt. I was done. It's like it wasn't fun anymore. I wasn't enjoying it. And I was walking through the student union building there at Mesa, and they had a job fair going on, and of course the vultures are there. So you see the military recruiters. They got a wall, all the vultures sitting around second kids, and they just yelled. And I happened to be the dumbass that turned around and looked when they said, "Hey, I don't know if they were they probably were talking to me, but I don't know. I'm the idiot that looked." And Tractor Beam sucked me in and like, "Hey, come here, take a look." And I saw the videos, and long story short, I saw all the cool videos, the SEALs, the PJs, the Ranger videos. Then you see SF ones too, and the recon guys, the Marine recon guys. And I just thought the Rangers. I'll be honest, what got me. They were all cool. They all looked hard. They all had fun blowing stuff up, jumping out of helicopters, helo casting into out of the back of a Chinook. Sneaking up on a beach with all your gear on, and I liked that beret, man. That black, which when I was in, Rangers were the only ones that had the black beret. Now it's tan. At the end of the video, it showed a beret, and I was like, that is badass. Just, hammer, brick jaw, berets hanging down, so he looks like a freaking pirate. It's totally against Army regulations, but he doesn't care because he's a Ranger, and that flash is hanging down. And I remember, I go, "Is that hard?" And the recruiter said, "Oh yeah, hell yeah, that's." I go, "Do people quit?" He goes, "Yeah, let's go." I don't know why, because I mean, I wasn't a glutton for punishment. I'd rather have it. At least I thought I'd rather have it easy. But when he said, when I asked if people quit, and he said yes, I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." It's like a challenge,
Oh
okay.
Yeah, no, it spoke to you. It absolutely spoke to you. You're like, "Oh, really? Hardest thing I'll ever do," or whatever they hook you in on.
At least I thought it was, and it was hard. And I signed up right there. And I enlisted, got my bachelor's. I had my bachelor's degree, so I was done. I graduated, and I enlisted, and I went home, told my mom. She was pissed. Yeah, telling Rita Garcia Paronto, "You don't tell Latina. You don't want to give a Latina bad news." And she's like, I don't think she called me pendejo so many times. Like, pendejo, what? Pendejo. It's like, "Mom, I got to do this." And I was off. I still remember the day that I got on a plane in Grand Junction, Colorado, and I did it with a buddy. We did the buddy plan, me and a guy named Matt Selke, who became a Ranger officer, a tremendous military guy as well. I love that guy. When we fly, I still remember my grandfather, Joaquin, my abuelo, was standing there, and I'd never seen him cry. Ever. He was tough. He's a migrant. He came over from Mexico. He came on a work visa, got a citizenship. He was an immigrant. And I just saw him crying. And it didn't make me feel like, "Oh man, I need to get off this plane." It kind of made me feel proud. I was like, man, I know that tears for proud. That's Grandpa being proud.
There's different tiers, right?
Yeah.
That was a moment. And it also probably fueled you a little bit to make sure, like, "Hey, I'm going to do this.
Yes.
I'm not going to wash out. Like, I'm doing this thing."
Yep. And I went, but I did wash out the first year. I got kicked out of the military. I got kicked out. I got an honorable discharge. I got kicked out because of we all go through it, man. We all go through. I had married my first wife, and she was screwing around on me when I was out on a JRX mission in Fort Bragg. We were doing JRX, joint readiness exercise. That's where you do an exercise, like a big combat exercise with the SEALs and Delta, and it's at Pope. So we've got the AFSOP guys, the Air Force Special Ops guys, the Spectres, and then we've got, of course, the 160th out there with their DAPs and their little birds, and it's a cool shit. It's super high stressful, and I found out she was screwing around on me, and went home, and I didn't make it to his doorstep, but I was gonna go kill him. And you can't do that. The military, especially when you get caught doing that, the military kind of frowns on that. Well, the society in itself frowns on that.
You might say the world frowns on that.
Yeah,
although you got every right to be pissed. But the solution you chose
was, and Jack Daniels didn't help with that solution. And luckily for me, it didn't happen. And I talk a little bit about that when I do corporate speaking. Actually, I do talk about the incident in detail, and because I want people, and that was hard the first time to do that because you're really exposing a huge wound to people you never met before. But I did believe there was that's an important part of learning about yourself, and that everybody screws up massively. Yeah. And I did, but luckily it didn't happen. But I did end up getting caught, and they ended up discharging me from the military, and I don't know why to this day. Sergeant Major, who's my first Sergeant Frank Grippy, who's a Ranger Hall of Famer, badass Ranger. He's got like 3 mustard stains, been in 3 separate combat, been in the GWAT, been in Panama, been in Grenada. I mean, this dude's a Ranger's Ranger. But yeah, it's just amazing. But he was my first sergeant at the time, and I had a guy named Paul LaCamera, who's now he's a 3-star general. He was my captain. They managed to get me an honorable discharge, and I don't know to this day how.
I mean, what's interesting is that allows you back in.
Yeah.
And allows you to get that second chance. And
yeah.
Whether they were doing that because they knew you wanted to come back in, or whether they were doing it just because they didn't want you to have a stain on your career for the rest of your life, they also probably were a little bit empathetic to saying like, hey man, this guy just went through a really tough experience, and he expressed it all wrong, but he's not doing that again.
Yeah, let's see if you learn. And I was a kid. I was still a kid. You know what? I was 20.
You're 23.
Yeah, 23 years old. I think turning 24. But I do. The grandfather, I remember my grandfather. I really did. I felt, that is a humbling. Humiliation is just as great a teacher as success. And I think we lose that in today's society, man. I really do. We're so like, hey, everybody, just lets everybody feel good. No, feel like shit. Feel terrible. And I did. I went home and I was humiliated. But I also thought to myself, I am not going to feel like this ever, ever again. I felt like I had failed. Not a failure. I felt like I'd failed. I didn't feel like a failure. There's a difference.
Big distinction. Distinction between those.
And
so
and
you went right back in.
I kept going, and go ahead. Well, I did. I had to take 2 years off.
It's an important detail because you just laid out. We don't need to mine into it. You failed, but yet, I mean, I can look on the wall behind you, and I know the accolades from your intro. That wasn't the end of the story. That was like the beginning. It was sort of like, hey, I had this moment here when I was 18 playing a Dixie where it got infused on me about winning. And here I am again 5 years later with a moment of introspection, and I'm either going to let this thing beat me or I want to win. So you went right back in.
I did. I had to take 2 years off because that was the stipulations of my contract. My reentry code was a 3. For those that know DD-214s, that's not good. I had honorable discharge, but my RE code was 3, which means I had to. There's always extra stipulations to getting back in. But I went to grad school and got my master's degree. I just like, I got to keep. I can't just stop. I got to improve. I mean, we're not going to quit. My dad has his PhD. My mom's a teacher. What can I do to continue to press on? And I went in University of Nebraska and I took the GRE and got my master's degree, and I actually went to spring break. The first year I was there, and I met my current wife, Tanya. She spilled a bunch of drinks on me at Louis Bar and Grill. Was a bunch of red cinnamon schnapps, which before the precursor of Fireball, and that's how we met. And but I did. I came back and then it took some time. It took a lot of finding the right recruiter that would help me because there was a lot of paperwork that needed to be involved. I took about 8 tries to get back in, but I finally found the right one, and I got back in, and I went. The only stipulation was I had to redo everything. So if you want something bad enough, you're going to go through it. And I did. I redid Basic, Airborne. I redid Ranger, which is RASP now. It's called RASP. It was Ranger Indoctrination Program. I went back to Ranger Battalion as a private, and then they shipped me off to Ranger School, got my tab, and then I was off and running again. I mean, everything was like, okay, this took a little while. It took a little longer than expected. My grandfather would be proud of me. I didn't quit. I'm here. I got my tab. I'm a team leader now. Holy crap. And then my platoon leader came and said, do you want to become an officer? You got your master. I didn't let anybody know. I didn't want nobody to know that because I knew that would happen. But as soon as my platoon leader found out, he's like, you got your master's degree, dude. What are you doing enlisted? You need to go become an officer. And I shot off, became an officer, and got my commission, and I'm off and running. And things look great. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, all your buddies that you were enlisted with start giving you a whole pile of shit because now you're the officer guy. And man, I've heard that for decades through Glen. that officer and regular guys, as he would call them sometimes. I'm like, well,
yeah,
I'm like,
there's a little bit more
good though.
And when you're a Mustang, that means an officer that was enlisted first. You are given a little bit more. I mean, they razz you more, but it's a respectful razz. It's not the new cherry lieutenant from West Point that comes in and says and knows everything, and they're setting him straight. It's like, yeah, you're an idiot, but you've been there, you've done it.
You've been on our side. It's kind of like I always laugh because I used to be. This is the civilian version of this for anyone who ever worked in a restaurant. I used to wash dishes, and then after I washed dishes, I washed dishes and I went to be a line cook, and I sort of worked away a prep cook, line cook, and I'm on the saute station and all that, and I'm making $8-9 an hour and feeling really good about it. I'm about 20 years old or something, and then it was Glen was like the one who's kind of like, hey man, waiters make a lot more money. They're making like $25 an hour with tips, and that was it, man. We dropped our aprons and went to the other side of the house, and all the cooks were just like, you traitors. And I'm like, I know, man, I can't help it. The money's too good. I got to do it. And but they, you give them shit. But then again, because you're on that other side, I always knew how to lay in with the kitchen and make sure I was never screwing them over. And you always treat them with respect. You always share a little bit of the kibby so that they're included on everything. And, all of a sudden you got the best service going to your tables with the best prep on your food. And, like, the other waiters who never knew that because they never worked back there, hey, man, we're all on the same team here.
You just know. You go through it. That's the best leaders are the ones that are honestly were the best followers. That's my opinion. That's why I enlisted. I could have become a direct commission. I could have not gone the Ranger Battalion, but I got offered a direct commission to go either go to JAG or go be. I want to enlist. I want to be a Ranger, but I also want to enlist because I can't learn to lead unless I know how to take shit. I know how to follow.
Well, that's also. I mean, that's football too, right? That's you worked your way up through that.
Yeah.
How long did you serve? How long were you active duty?
Actually, I did 4 years active and then 4 years in the Guard when I went to 19 Special Forces Group. And I would have stayed longer, but I had ulcerative colitis, and during a training mission in Fort Benning, I crapped my drawers and all blood and mucus came out, and it wasn't a good thing. Wasn't something good. So they rushed me to Martin Army Hospital, and I got assaulted, and I found out I had ulcerative colitis. I had it for, I didn't know it at the time, but I'd had it for quite some time. And
we talked about this.
Yeah, it had eaten up my insides. So I was medically discharged. So again, another obstacle was like, because I that wasn't the plan. The plan was I was staying in. I'm either going to go back to battalion as an officer or go to Delta, try out for Delta or Ranger Recon Detachment as officer and stay in forever and retire. And it was like, oh crap, well this sucks. Medically discharged, and then that's when the contracting world just came. Again, I wasn't looking for it. It just came about.
It's got a funny way of presenting itself. So obviously, like I know about the contracting world through Glen, right? Like Glen, 10 years, 12 years SEAL, gets out from after over a decade of service, and then it's like, okay, I got all these skills built up. You got 8 years under your belt, and I know how to do this job. But what's the next job? Now you've got a master's degree, so you're kind of kicking the tires and you're feeling it out. But how many of them are going to hand you a day rate that's like $900 to $1,200 a day, and you're only going to be gone for 3 months, but you're going to make like 30-40 grand?
Yeah, really at the time I was still fighting my colitis, so I was still pretty weak and sick. I had it seriously. I'd lost 30 pounds within a couple weeks. I was still trying to figure out, my prednisone dosages, and then the anti-inflammatory dosages, and what I could eat, what I couldn't. And so even then, I was just struggling on military disability, going, how am I going to, we didn't have kids at the time, luckily for us, but I was like, how are we going to have a family? And so really the money was secondary. It was just, what are we going to do? And I got a call. I got a call from Blackwater in 2003 and Triple Canopy in 2003. And luckily for me, one of my Ranger buddies had recommended me because they were looking for guys. It was a brand new thing. The Karzai thing was going on in Afghanistan. They had just started to move to Iraq. So they're trying to find people for Bremer and the Coalition Provisional Authority. They didn't have enough guys. So the ones they had, it wasn't like, hey, Yeah, like today, where you can go sign up, go to SOC or go to Black or Covent or what's it called, Constellus Group now. It's not Blackwater.
Yeah.
Or go to Ocean Hunter Group or and sign up and be a security. It wasn't like there was no send your resume and sort of thing. It was, hey guys, we need people. Who do you know? And my name was given from a ranger buddy that was already with Blackwater, and then I had a ranger buddy at Triple Canopy, and it was just a phone call that, hey, do you want to go be a contractor? And I didn't have work. I was like, well, I really have nothing else unless I want to go be a telemarketer again, like I did when I was in college, which I don't think I can sit behind a desk and I didn't want to be an insurance adjuster anymore, because I did that. The movie's right. I actually am a licensed flood insurance adjuster, but it wasn't. I wasn't enjoying that as much, and I was like, well, I'll go.
No,
and then when they said the pay after, that's when the eyes went, what? Did I hear you right? What did you say you were going to pay me? And it was that was just that was the nail in the coffin or icing on or whatever. I was going regardless. The pay was like, wow. Yeah. It was amazing.
All right.
So
icing on the cake, nail in the coffin, because
nail in the coffin. Yeah, that's so
it's
true.
A brutal line of work.
True.
But it's kryptonite. That's what Glen always referred to that money. He's like, dude, this is kryptonite money. He's like, where else can I go where I leave a job where I'm getting paid active duty, making $70,000 a year, which wasn't bad, but then he's going to make $170 by flipping and working direct contracting with GRS, and he did some security groups before that, and ended up landing on going direct.
Yeah, all of us did that. Yeah, all of us did that security, or we did other contracts. I would do anything that, and you get to know when you get in that early, you get to know everybody, and that's how you get the really cool jobs that aren't ever out there on the, they aren't ever advertised out there. So I got to do anti-piracy stuff. Actually, I got to do anti-kidnapping stuff in South America, and then I got to rescue a little girl that needed a heart transplant and link up with the Jordanian Royal Guard and be by myself and go with them and get to the border of Iraq, meet the Marines, bring her back with some doctors. And so the money was always great. It was. I ain't gonna lie, guys. It was great. But the experiences, man, and when you're doing this, you're not on a base. So especially when you're doing the private stuff, I'm living in the city. So I get to go, I'm going out and seeing places. I'm going out and seeing buildings. I'm going to shrines. I'm getting paid to be a tourist that carries a gun. So yeah.
There's some amazing culture and some amazing history in every one of these areas that you're going to, whether it's in South America or obviously predominantly in the Middle East, and you're seeing our world history right in front of you. So yeah, I mean, when you're not on a high stakes mission with the Jordanian National Guard with a kidnapped victim, which we're going to talk about again, then you get to go to these amazing, monuments or natural history sites that you read about as a kid,
or even just sitting at a local coffee shop and seeing and watch it. You feel like a spy movie, even though it's not. Because there's no Jason Bournes. I'm sorry, even you Jason Bournes that think you're Jason, you're not. All right, it's not. But going to and just learning a restaurant and just sitting there and taking in or sitting on the Mediterranean and drinking some chai. And just watching as there's a tank that's burning off to the side, but you got this beautiful ocean here, and then you're looking towards the city and a bomb goes, and an IED goes. It's like, and you just take another sip of your chai. You're like, this is so freaking cool. And I'm getting the smell of the Mediterranean Ocean breeze. I mean, where do you get that? I mean, and that's, with Glen, I know Glen felt the same way, because a lot of guys miss that. They want the action. I'm here to kick butt and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of bubble gum. And I think that's why, Ben and Glen and I, we weren't best friends. And I have told you, we're not, we worked together and but we could always relate together because he was that same way. He was this, maybe he wasn't that on the teams, but GRS, it was like he'd take the time to notice something that wasn't war or combat or security related, and that's what made those trips special.
That's what makes that I couldn't agree more. I mean, literally, he would come home and talk about that, and like when Glen died, I had all these like camera photos and stuff, and I knew most of it, but like as I'm going through, in like 2012 and 13, I'm getting these photos, and it's like he's got his vest on, his gun's holstered, and he's like pointing up like this, like a disco pose. and there's a giant pyramid behind him, because he's in the middle of, Egypt or Iraq or wherever the hell he is. And I'm just like, man, taking a few moments to smell the roses and just get an idea of it. And like, it's like there's funny shots. He was walking around some ancient ruin site and he found where they used to, how they use the toilet. And it was like 2 rocks slightly split apart with a hole down the middle. And so he like drops trout, takes a selfie picture on his BlackBerry, because that's a phone you had to have back then.
Yeah.
And he's just like, hey, check me out. I'm living history here.
That's so.
But that's the stuff. Like that's like take those moments and make some lemonade out of what some folks are just miserable over there and just pissed off or whatever. Like you got a chance to get the most out of it, and it looks like you guys both did. And I knew that connection point. And again, it's not like everyone comes home from service, from being in GRS, from working those security jobs, and you're all best friends when you get home.
No,
I think that's rare. But by the other side, you always know who the guys that are reliable and who you want on your side, and who you're happy to see when you get over there. And he would talk about that. He'd be like 18-hour days, miserable gym, shitty sleeping conditions. He said, the only good thing I got going here is that there's a couple of good guys that are pulling their weight. And that was it. Like I remember talking to Evan Hafer from Black Rifle about this, and he talked about like they did, I think, 1 or 2 deployments together on GRS. And he's like, man, there's something about working with Glen. He's like, he just found a way to make the shittiest jobs be enjoyable and bearable. He's like, he brought that happiness to it. He's like, I remember we had to clean out the shitters one day at, God knows where in Iraq. And he's like, we're cleaning out shitters and burning the poo. And like, it's horrible. He's like, Glen's just like, let's go, boys. Let's go burn some poo. Come on.
And that's what makes it fun. You have to find laughter, because laughter truly is the best medicine. It is. It's hilarious. And I had the same experience with guys like Tadpole and Jinx, and I'm name dropping out there, and people that listen, they'll know some of these, and they're going to smile. Some of these people are like, oh yeah, I know Jinx, that big Texas son of a bitch that always wore a huge belt. If we called him Bionic Man, because he was blown up in Israel with the platter charge, so he was all full of metal. So he was this big cowboy that was like the $6 million man, but he was just so redneck. But it's those stories that you come from, not really the security stories. I mean, those were fun, but that was work. It was the off time stuff, or the degrading stuff that you had, like burning poo. Like, man, I was like, man, I thought we just did this shit in Vietnam. What are we doing? Come on, man,
we're doing this again.
Haven't we at least moved a little bit further since the 1960s? It's like, but whatever. But you do it together and you enjoy it. But you're right. When you get home, it's not that you're not friends. It's just it's different. And a lot of times with me, when I came home, I wanted to be left alone. I didn't want to, hey, let's go to the bar and have a drink and let's reminisce. No, I want to keep that separate. Let me come. I just want to be with my family, and I'm still pretty much the same way, to be honest with you. I'll reminisce with some close buddies every once in a while, but I don't. When I get invited, hey, let's go down. Hey, you want to come to SHOT Show? Let's go drinking. No, I think I'm just going to go back to my room, guys. I really, I don't want to. I don't need to relive it. I mean, I will when it.
Some do. Some do, not you. And you've got Tanya. Like, you've got this anchoring force who went through 8 years of active duty service, over a decade of additional deployments, of you being gone. Like, and there's something very, very real about that. And I mean, like, look at the glamour of these high-paying jobs in security that for those that don't know, is like you're gone on these 90-day chunks, possibly longer. And then you're home, but you're never home for the whole next 90 days. There's always some sort of education, prep work, additional certifications you need to go through, or research on your shooting qualifications or your driving quals, or there's always something that just erodes at that, and then you're gone for another 90 days. And imagine leaving your young children or leaving your family and then reintegrating and like, hey, I'm back. And then right when everything's flowing and comfortable and you guys are like in the rhythm, you're gone again. That's tough stuff, man.
Then you're out again. Yeah, it is. It usually takes me about 30 days to get reacclimatized to just being home. And not just me, my family being reacclimatized to me come home. It was tough towards the end. because you want that fairy tale Hallmark channel where the kids are running at the airport and giving you a hug. I mean, you want that, but that, I'll be honest, that rarely happened because the family has those ups and downs, and the kids don't, or the kids, they're taking the airport and they're giving dad hugs that is stressful on them. And that didn't happen a lot. And I remember asking my wife, even just a few years ago, because I even with me traveling to do speaking events, and some of those years when the movie came out, I was still gone quite often. So
Yeah.
can't you come to the airport once and just come get me? And she's like, she made a good point. She goes, "Oh, she did a few times, and she still does a few. But it's like the kids, we have to get used to you being gone because you're gone so much. And if we're going through if the kids are going through these ups and downs of you going and coming and you going, it's not good for their psyche. And I get that. I could totally agree with that. And it made sense to me. And it comes back to, okay, be the bigger person. And I think Bub would think the same thing. Who's going to be the bigger person? Dad, is he going to be able to sacrifice and handle it? Yeah, dad needs to sacrifice, not the kids, not my wife. Yeah. I signed up for this. They didn't. Yeah, she married me, but I wasn't a contractor when she married me. I was still in the army, so that didn't count. The kids didn't sign up for this. So it took me a little bit like swallowing my pride and being like, okay, quit being an asshole. She's right. The kids don't need to be going through this roller coaster. Every once in a while, we'll get the rundown. Laura Ingalls running down the grassy knoll, giving dad a hug, but that didn't always happen. And honestly, I don't think it would have been good for them emotionally if it happened for it was 11 years, for 11 years straight.
Yeah,
come.
Makes a ton of sense. I mean. Right now you're in a better relationship with that, but now that being said, and obviously like those transitions being as tough as they were, I'm going to kind of lead into obviously one of the more career defining and like moments, which it's funny when you look at the breadth of your life, you don't want this necessarily to be one of the thing, but hey, it's a thing and it's there and it's not going away.
Yeah,
you've got so many other areas that are epic, and this just counts as one of those, like, wow, man, like, what do you do when tough times hit? What do you like? What's the character that you show? And you showed the best character that you could show. But now, I want to ask just a couple of quick questions because, folks can read the book 13 hours. They can watch the movie 13 hours. Hell, if you really want a rabbit hole, you can read Sarah Adams' book, which she's an amazing intelligence officer from the CIA who really broke down the warring factions that were going on in Libya. Yeah. At the time, I'm still confused by them. I text her every once in a while, like when I've got a question, I'm like, hey, what about this person over here? And it is an absolute labyrinth. And thank God our intelligence community has, at least with people like her, like this amazing grasp on what really went down. But forget good guy, bad guy, all that stuff. Just from your experience that night, you had a very different experience than Bub's experience. Glen's experience going in there was different than yours. I'd like you to tell me just a little bit about that, because I don't want to go too far in the weeds, just kind of like that whirlwind, though. I think people want to hear that.
Well, you talking about just my experience or when Bub came? I don't remember Bub even going like this to me as I was giving him shit as he was coming in. I was like, welcome, guys. Hey, welcome to the... And I said, welcome to the party, guys. Good for you guys to see here. And he's just like walking by me going like, that's Bub. It's Bub's like, Tanto, I ain't got time. I ain't got time for you right now, dude. And your shit. Your jackassery. But the night in itself, and, to sum up, because, the night lasted, night to the next morning, 13 hours, hence why we call it 13 hours today. And it is kind of odd. I do think that it's not poetic. It's just, 13 is an unlucky number. I mean, that can be seen as an evil number. It's you don't want to have unlucky 13, and here we are. It's 13 hours. What's the coincidence in that? And I guess maybe that's the PTSD, post-traumatic stress, whatever, getting in my brain and the paranoia. But looking at it and being there, it wasn't a coincidence that it happened at that point in my career. Because of what we've talked about already, the adversity and just a few of the failures, and they were massive failures that I went through, or obstacles. If I hadn't gone through getting kicked out of the military, or that divorce where I made the mistake of going and ambushing the guy she was sleeping with me, or the ulcerative colitis that damn near killed me, or going back through basic and airborne and ranger, doing it twice, and I don't think I would have handled. I don't know the other guys, but I know I wouldn't have handled myself as well as I did that evening. And also, yeah, I'd been deploying at that point for close to 11 years. So I said, the Lord works in mysterious ways. If that would have happened early in my career, I think the outcome, at least for me, would have been different. I don't think I would have performed as well. And I call me conceited if you want. I know I performed well that night. The whole team performed well. It's why we were able to really do what we did. But going there,
make no mistakes. Under those level of adversity and those odds, the team performed incredibly well. The losses could have been much greater.
Yes.
The American lives lost. The damages both over at the State Department facility and the annex could have been infinitely worse. So hands down, the way you guys approach security, the way you guys just handled everything right until Bub came in and some reinforcements came in, like that's evidenced by history.
And I appreciate that, man. Thanks, Sean. That's really nice of you to say. Man, I appreciate that. And I know the guys would say the same thing if they were sitting with you. They say thank you. And I do know that all of us were older. All of us had been through a lot. And there's something to be said. There's something to be said for training. There's something to be said for hard, arduous training or deployments or arduous and hard experience, difficult experience you go through. But there's also a lot to be said for maturity. All of us were older. And I do think that had a lot of play in it as well. All of us. I mean, even Bub, I think, was 40 at the time. Tig was our youngest guy. He's 39, and that's pretty ancient for military. I mean, that's old. And those experiences that all of us had gone throughout our careers, whether it was personal, professional, it did play into that night, which is why every one of us, whenever something bad would happen, or we'd get word that there's nobody coming, and there was a stand down order by our chief, and there was orders from the State Department and the Eurocom commander and General Casey to get guys spun up, and then they stopped them because of political ramifications that would have looked poorly on that current administration. But it was that none of us cared about that at that. It wasn't who gives a shit.
You said that incredibly well.
Well, and then that's the truth. It was like, who gives a shit? We got a job to do. Let's get it done. Yeah. And just continue to move forward. All right, we got an obstacle here. What are we going to do? We're going to whine about it like everybody does on social media now? Hey, it's terrible. No, screw it. Can't do nothing about it. We can't affect that. What can we affect? That guy coming over that fence, I can shoot him in the face. I can affect that. That guy that's trying to sneak around the corner, Oz, can you affect? Yes, Oz can affect that. Boone, see that guy way out there 300 meters in Zombieland with your SR-25? Can you affect him trying to get out of here on his... Yeah, you can affect him. Put his ass down. The stuff that we had control of, we maximized it. The stuff we didn't have control of, we didn't sit and, I always say poo-poo about it. We didn't sit and cry about it.
You didn't have time.
No, and you don't. And when you get to that level, you don't complain. You complain after. We're going to bitch after. Oh, you've been around SEALs and Rangers and Special. We bitch. We go to the bar. You're going to hear us bitch constantly. That motherfucker. That piece. He could have done it. Oh, man. And the drunker we get, the more we bitch. But at that time, no. It's time to get the job done. You are not getting onto this compound, and we're going to keep shooting you and killing you until we can't do it anymore. That's either because you kill us or we run out of ammo, and that's it.
Yeah. And, again, all of that is happening, and you guys are affecting things, and you have stand-down orders, and there's a whole stink around that. And again, we could have an entire conversation around that. The bottom line is I wasn't in the room for those conversations. Obviously, on the civilian side, you weren't in the room for those. You just know that there's optics and mechanics and politics at play, and they're not doing you any favors, but fuck it, it's real time. We got to go. And that, that decision-making, like no station chiefs can be like, I'm going to suspend you if you do this activity. It's like, I got it. I'm feeling for this person like, all right, you're in the middle of a shit sandwich because someone above you is pouring the poo down on you, and you're telling all these fucking gunfighters, these warfighters, to sit on their asses. It ain't going to happen. And then you somehow got to, turn the blind eye while they walk out the door and hop in their vehicles and go down the street.
It's easy for the chief to turn that blind eye because all of us could, if you want to do the old school way of doing things, all right, Chief, you want to make this decision? Let's go behind the woodshed. We'll settle it right now. And that's the kind of guys you're dealing with. I mean, you're dealing with Roan, who's now anybody that has served with Tyrone Woods will tell you in the teams that Roan was a tough, mean, bad. He was like a father figure to me. He would keep me in check, but he was a tough, and he was a big son of a bitch. Me, I was just like the guy. Pablo played me perfectly. I didn't take shit from anybody. You may beat me, but we're going to be in a fight. I'm a little guy, and Tig was the same way. Tig didn't take any shit. Oz, he's a country redneck. He ain't taking it. So, but the chief, and that's why whenever I did my testifying with the chief, when I did either the Benghazi Select Committee or that first committee with Mike Rogers, they always asked me, they said, do you think it was the chief maliciously kept you behind? And I said, no, I don't think that at all. I just think he was way out of his element and he was crapping down his pants. And that's the thing within the military, is if you are an officer, and that's why we have the best officers in the Special Operations Command, is because if they don't know, they're going to rely on even a subordinate that is an expert in that. And that was my difficulty with our chief, was that he didn't do that. It was a pride thing. And that's a CIA civilian. I'm in charge. You do what I tell you, even though I'm completely out of my element. And I even testified that. I said, if it was this analyst thing, or you guys were trying to develop a new asset, I'm not going to tell the chief what to do. This is combat. You don't tell us what to do. And I said that. I said that in both committees. Yeah. And to me, that's just common sense. But that
common sense doesn't necessarily align with civilian leadership trying to make decisions around intelligence assets, political optics around elected officials, and like that. Unfortunately, that logical decision making that you have just didn't ring in the situation. Now, here we are 12 years later, and I damn well hope that better decision making is going to be had, because this is going to happen again, some version of it. I mean, when you watch what's happening in Israel right now, we're poking a bear, not us, but the bear is being poked over in Iran. You've got Russia on the sidelines, just like, all right, cool, you guys go get distracted. I'm gonna go fuck up, Ukraine right now. And then by the way, China's got their eyeballs firmly fixed on Taiwan. And these things, something is going to pop, something more than what's already popping. And it may not be now. This whole thing could diffuse, but hey, man, like, history repeats itself, and there's going to be these opportunities to have our fighters, whether it's the next generation of GRS or whether it's some active duty guys or whether it's whatever, are going to be put into these adverse situations. And I hope that, call it suits in Washington, civilian leadership, call it whatever you want to, are willing to just get out of the way.
I think what the effect was on Benghazi and what happened is that safety took precedence, which is okay. I don't, safety, security, we want that. But it definitely affected our intel gathering. It's going to affect, because they're not going to, risk averse is what we call it. We were getting more risk averse. I even saw it from 2005 on. I even think it's even more so now. So we're suffering because of it. Either we protect our people, which we want to do, which we saw it in Kabul. Even they tried to overrun it. We got everybody out of there. We saw it when Trump was in office, and they had those protesters coming to the embassy in Baghdad, and he got the Marines. We did exactly what he's supposed to. He didn't do anything, but he did what a president's supposed to: get the fast company there, get the Marines there. He did that. But what the problem is that because of being risk averse, we're not willing to gain intel. Sometimes you have to let that CO or that GRS guy or a ground branch guy, you got to let them go out on their own, and we might lose them, or we might have a facility that is lightly defended, because we're trying to not show that it's an American facility. So we're trying to put people on the ground like we used to do with GRS, like the annex. And I don't know if that's going to happen much in these countries that are deemed threat critical, which are the high level countries that you could die in. I just don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think it is the case, period, anymore. I mean, Sarah could probably answer that better than I could. Super bad. The intel on us that just keeps cranking away on finding our bad guys that got us. But we're suffering regardless, whether it's being risk averse, or we're going to put people out there and now we're risking their lives, and now it's going to be a political fiasco when a State Department or CIA or somebody dies. Then
I don't disagree.
But it's a no win. They've got to realize it's not there's a no win scenario here for you guys politically, but damn the politics. We've got to get strategy going on. So what are you going to be?
Put human life has to rank in here higher, and on this particular one, that calculation wasn't made well, and like they're guaranteed there's some public relations professionals out there that have unpacked this as a case study to say like, okay, look at Clinton, you could have saved yourself a whole lot of headaches if you weren't opining about what outfit you should wear to a press conference about this one while you're killing time, and actually just said, go let it rip. Because guess what? Not a lot of Americans on the right side of the fence are going to be bummed out at you for that one. But the other option, you're going to have a lot of them really bummed out at you. And guess what? As someone who lost their best friend, and that not that she could have prevented that necessarily, but I would have preferred the let it rip solution. And on that note,
you make the effort. You always make the effort, Sean. That's the thing. We're Americans. We make the freaking effort. Let's at least try. And then if we didn't. But we didn't try. And when you don't try, that means, as Americans, that means you don't care. It's what it looks like. You don't try, you don't care, and that's how I saw it. I guess you guys didn't give a shit. And that's
a good way of putting it. Like that's what it felt like. That's what it still feels like. Like really, just didn't really give a shit. Like just more concerned about your election optics, or like just kind of cover your ass. Like that whole CYA thing. I heard that time and time again coming out of the State Department specifically. Less so the CIA, although, I had my words with John Brennan and his team directly, and I was lucky enough to be on the civilian side to be able to get a meeting with him and talk. But, like, I didn't get the same sense from them. The State Department side, I never really chatted with those folks, but I know everything I kept hearing over and over again was like, oh, you got this guy, Kennedy, and he's kind of pointing fingers over here. You got this woman, Lamb, and she's pointing fingers over here. And they're just ducking and weaving, and those are two names that I'll say the rest of my life, and they're never going to be in a good context.
I'll say it right now. You don't have to say it. They're scumbags. Kennedy was a scumbag when I was in Iraq, leading on, and so was Lamb. But, we'll leave it right there.
We'll leave it right there. Let's go back to that night. So you guys are waiting for reinforcements.
Yeah.
And you're not like waiting for them like, well, I don't want to shoot that bad guy in the face because, I think there's a plane that should be on its way in. It was more like, man, I don't know. I hope those guys show up at some point, but I can't depend on them.
Yeah.
And we got to keep going here. What was the sense when they did finally arrive? Like you finally got word and comms in that hey, they've landed in Benghazi, which was hours and hours after it should have been.
Well, when we got word that it was Bub's team that did. It was Bub and then 3 other GRS guys, and then 2 Delta Force guys, and then we had an interp that he wasn't necessarily a combat interp, but he had done some combat interpretations or combat patrol in other countries. So
he didn't know what he signed up for that night. But he paid. He earned his pay. He earned his
pay. But when they got there, really it was, well, when are they coming? It wasn't, yay, they're here. It was, well, okay, step 1 is done. A, now they got to get to B, and then they got to get to C. So A's here. Step A was they got to the airfield, they got a plane. B was they're at Benina. All right. And it wasn't high fives. It was, all right, well, they need to get their asses here. Come on. And it looked at, not that in a mean way, it just was, and I think in we do it in special ops, we do it in any military, it's math. It's A, B equals C. Well, A, B, and now they got to get to C. They still got to get here. Okay, while we're waiting, let's just keep doing what we're doing. And it was still just maintain what we're doing, make sure nobody gets on the compound, reinforcements are coming. I didn't know the number at the time. I didn't know the scope or the magnitude, if they had how big the militia was coming. If it was just those guys, I knew, I just knew people were coming.
Yeah, so well, the idea was that it wasn't just them, right? The idea was that it was going to be a couple of Delta guys, a couple of GRS guys, Bub, and then they were supposed to have a militia, local friendly, that was going to bring them in, and little beknownst to you or anybody else, those guys were taking a paycheck from the other side. And so they're kind of holding things back.
It was, they were waiting to get paid. And it was a fight of honestly, that more that it was, they didn't know each other. And that was one thing with and why is that big a deal? In the other countries we're in, Iraq, Afghanistan, we knew the militias. And that was what was so odd with Libya, is that we didn't get to know the militias as well as like we had in other countries. So if you said a militia is common in Iraq, and I could say, well, what are they? Who are they? Okay, got it. Where are they located? But there it was, well, we have, when they said militia, I was like, we have one? I was like, 17 Feb? No, it's not 17 Feb. Well, who else is there? And so that's why it got out of my head to even care, because it just was just going to create more stress and worry. Why worry about it? I mean, you already got this fight going on. Let's not worry. They got it. They know what they're, and it was also a sense of, okay, they know what they're doing. They got it. Let them handle it. They're going to get here. And it ended up turning out that the militia actually belonged to Omar Gaddafi. And that was what was just, I found that out later. I didn't even know that till after the second select committee went on, that they're like, yeah, that militia belonged to Omar Gaddafi. I'm like, what? The guy that we actually killed, his generals, his colonels, and his team were the guys that come save us. And it also just showed the hypocrisy of the United States government and foreign policies and things. Yeah. But knowing that they were coming, but when I saw them coming that first time, it wasn't a big militia. I was like, Patrick Swayze Roadhouse, I thought they'd be bigger. I thought there was more people coming. So, yeah. But I was happy they were there. It was nice to see, okay, I got to take a crap. Somebody can come relieve me now because I got to get down and take a dump. All right, got guys here. It is a motivating. Anytime you see a cavalry coming, no matter the size, it's going to motivate you. It does. And it was nice to see Bub and the other three guys I can't name because they could still be working. I don't know if they are or not, but I'd worked with all of them in different theaters, so I knew all the three guys that were coming in. It was nice. The Delta guys I didn't know, but again, it's just more guns. It's like, okay, well, we got some, and maybe somebody could come up here and spell me so I could, get downstairs and take a dump and wash my face off and get some water. So it's a motivating and morale boost when you see people come and finally get there. Yeah. And Bub was the only, I still remember. I didn't know it was Bub, but I remember one guy going up to the roof. Everybody else walked into building C. That kind of pissed me off, Sean. I'm not going to lie to you. It did. It's like, what the hell? Guys, we need to be relieved. This is 101 infantry stuff. When reinforcements come, they relieve the guys that are in place so they can go rest and refit and get some more ammo. That's battle. That's 1 Alpha, man. That's infantry platoons. That's basic shit. And they all went in except for Bub. But I saw a guy go up on the roof of the building C, and it was Bub, it was Rowan, it was Oz, and it was Dave Ubin. I didn't know it. I just knew there was 4 guys. Yeah. I'd found out after. And I'm like, one guy actually came to help. What the? And I was pissed. I didn't go. I was like, that sounds.
Well, you're in the moment.
I got on the radio. And I expressed my frustration.
I would like that audio recording. I'm sure it was colorful.
I was like, it was a little cold. I was like, you mother. I said, get up here. I need to take a shit. Somebody get up here and relieve me, you motherfucker. Chicken shit. And then by that time, the first mortar, I just heard the shh, and it was up. I heard it. Yeah. It didn't sound like a mortar. My hearing had been completely blasted out because of the SR-25 on this ear and just the shooting all night. I didn't, even my surveillance kit, the earpiece I took it out part of the time. So when we'd shoot, and then I just saw it hit. I saw it through my night vision. I saw it and I felt it. And it was almost right on building C. They hit right where they wanted to hit. That thing had been set up. And if you have Sarah on your show, she'll tell you the same thing. She even confirmed it. That thing had been set up for months prior to. They just hammered us. They fucking hammered us.
That particular detail was shared with me, that idea of you don't just triangulate that quickly and get your third shot. It doesn't just happen. Mortars aren't that accurate. You got to spend time making sure that you're dialed in. And I mean, as I remember thinking there was 3 total shots and it was boom, boom, third one done. But even second one.
I saw 5. And I know there's maybe a fog of war thing. I think we'll always come to agreement that maybe 4, but I saw boom. And then the second one came right on top. That one took out Roan. And then it was 3. Boom, boom, fire for effect. They were right on top. If they had a spotter, he's like, and that's what we would do. Even if they didn't have a spotter, but they probably had a spotter somewhere we didn't see. And he's like, fire for effect. You drop, the first one goes out, it was 10 meters off building C. And you'll say, if you're a spotter, you'll say, oh, hey, Roger, drop 20. Drop 20, and you don't say right or left. You just keep it because they don't need to move right or left. And they didn't. Mm-hmm. So, or you say drop 10 meters. And they, next one hits. Boom. That one's right on top. And if it's right on top, then Roger that, you're good. Fire for effect. And it's just, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
And that's infantry again. Another infantry 101 stuff that if you're especially and if you've been at a Ranger unit, that because you very well versed in artillery, but more so mortars because that's what we carry. So I was like, yeah, that's fire for effect. They hammered us and just killed us.
Yep. It's an interesting time because like this is all happening super, super fast. And, I get versions of the stories over the years, and I've really locked on to a couple of them in terms of just character and heroism. I think I didn't know that you had to go to the bathroom, but that's real shit that's happening in the moment. I'm gonna
literally and figuratively, yeah.
But what I do know is that like you guys stayed up there. You guys did your job. You didn't leave. You're like, okay, hey, this isn't convenient. I gotta poo. Like it's like, no, man, we're doing a real job here. Glen gets to the scene, and it's funny because I had heard a couple of things about him getting onto the scene and his whole journey, which is a separate adventure of getting the plane in Tripoli, locking in the pilot, and paying for it, and then of course getting down the 2-hour flight or whatever to Benghazi, and then getting locked up at the airport, not locked up,
it was
but
like for 3 hours just trying to coordinate that militia. They were there for a long
imagine sitting at an
time.
airport for 3 hours, like not really being allowed to leave. And by allowed, I mean you can shoot your way out, but that's not the way. And like you need these guys to be a part of your team. Like that unknown variable that you're trying to work through has got to be. I mean, I heard he was losing his mind.
Oh yeah,
like, I got to get to my brothers. I got to get into the fight, and not just him. I'll make that assumption about the Delta guys and the other GRS operatives that were there. Like everyone's just like losing their shit. Then he gets there, and one of the things I've always taken kind of warmth from is the idea that he got up on that rooftop and he just started lighting people up, and and it was like it was brief.
And that's where, man, why with Glen and I knowing what I know of Glen and just working with him, I know he probably wishes, man, I wish I would have been able to shoot more. I wish I would. It's just that's what sucked, and that's what was like so disheartening to me. And but it's also shows this intestinal fortitude, and why I always speak highly of Glen when I talk about intestinal fortitude and selfless service. Is that he may not realize it because he didn't get to shoot a ton. Yeah, when they got hit, they were ripping. I mean, I remember when that first mortar hit, that whole roof just. I mean, it was Roan's going cyclic on that 46. Even though we shorted 240 in the movie, guys, because we didn't have another rubber 46. Sorry about that. So, but it was a Mark 46, and then Roan. Bub spins and Oz spins and Dave, and they're hammering, and I'm shooting over their heads because I'm like, gosh, they're shooting. I want to shoot at something. I just got, and then just seeing that other mortar hit, and then the other ones. I mean, it was so quick that it just silent, and pixie dust goes up in the air, and they're gone. But I always think, man, Bub has no idea because of the massive injuries to Dave and Oz, and I know why he does because he's seen it from heaven, but maybe not that night that. Even though in that brief moment that he got to fight, and I know he wanted to fight more because that's what Bub was. Bub was a fighter. He'd want to fight. He did save 2 lives, man, by getting that plane. Whatever it took for them that I have no idea what they went through to get that plane there was even more important than us shooting. Because if those planes hadn't gotten there, well, we definitely would have lost Ronan, Oz, and Dave Ubin because their appendages were coming off.
They would have bled out. They were bleeding to death.
And the rest of us, who knows, man? Because we didn't see American aircraft in Benghazi. We talked our way out of there. Who knows? Maybe they would have tried to roll us up. Maybe militia would have got paid more and they would have turned on us. Yeah, it's those countries. So I the movie 13 Hours. I watch it more and more. I wish we could have put more of Bub in there and his personality, because it was hilarious. But the more I see it, the more I see Bub, and I just, man, he saved a shitload of lives, more so than we could have done with guns. And he was the only one that had the bravery to get up on the roof while everybody else went in the building. And whether, hey, they can like me or not, those guys that went in the building, you guys were chicken shit. Bub wasn't. That's how I see it. And they hate. I'm sure they hate me because I don't care. I don't give a crap if they do or not. Bub came up on there. And I was like, man, at least one of them came up, and it paid with his life. But
that was his sense of brotherhood. I mean, Tyrone Woods was up there. They went through SEAL together. They were brothers. You get up there and you help out. And you look at, I don't know what else was going on there. I can't comment on that. I just know that, like I've always taken great pride in that. You're giving me something to take even more pride from, and that is like I know a little bit about the story from the Tripoli side. And you're down there and you are on that rooftop and you're in hell. And Glen's calling his bank to see if he can get $50,000 out of his savings account wired over to some, Libyan national who's got the private jet because the CIA hasn't opened their purse strings to like pay for this $50,000 private jet flight. That's Glen. I will spend my own money. I'll send you the fucking invoice later. I'm going.
And that's what's maddening, and that's why it took a long time for me to let a lot of the anger go. Because, like, are you kidding me? And then he's got to get the money to him. And then when we get home, you guys aren't even willing to pay for his funeral. You want nothing. It's like, are you? I'm getting fired up. I'm not angry like I
don't mean to do that to you.
No.
I've lived this. Like, trust me. Like, getting on the receiving end of those emails and forms after the dust settled, and realizing just how poor the bureaucracy was and is in the United States Department of Labor, Department of State, and to a degree it was in the Central Intelligence Agency was fucking shocking. And that's a story for another time to talk about how to get really fired up and turn that into some activism, because I'm a big fan of, hey, we all get dealt with adversity. It's how you deal with it that defines you. And we're going to hit pause on that one right there, because that's a whole nother chapter. Yeah. I do want to touch on one last thing, which was kind of the first time I heard your name.
Uh-oh.
And one of the things that came out of it. So very shortly after, it was after, like, Benghazi had happened, the insurance stuff was in full tilt, and I had a meeting with Dorothy Woods. Now, Dorothy Woods, of course, was married to Tyrone Woods. Yeah. Dorothy had very briefly been my dentist down in La Jolla in San Diego. So I never knew Tyrone. I'd never met him, but I knew his wife. I knew his wife because Glen said that we needed dentists because we're two dudes turning 40. And he's like, probably got to go get a dentist. I'm like, yeah, it's probably a good idea. So Dorothy became my dentist. And I met up with her after it all went down. And I mean, talk about a woman who's absolutely as tough as nails. And I haven't spoken to her in over a decade now, but we spoke a fair bit then because we were in the moment. And she said, hey, yeah, so, there's this book being put together in this movie about what happened. And I remember thinking, like, man, this is really fast. But I guess that at that time, that's when history was starting to unfold. You didn't wait. And she's like, yeah, like, these other guys are in this. She's like, but I got a call or an email or something, some communication from Tanto. And she's like, I really like him. He's a solid guy. And it was like a very passive endorsement of you. Therefore, whatever this book project or thing would be, it was kind of like, she's like, yeah, like it's out there. I remember that was like my first impression. I was like, okay, well, whatever these other guys who I don't know, I know that this one name that I wouldn't know, I would never meet you until years and years later, got high marks from Dorothy, who I've got a ton of respect for. So tell me a little bit about the kind of book to the movie to that chapter, because obviously that that changed things.
Well, and I hope, Dorothy, because I think the world of her. We did meet one time when Sean Hannity was having victims of terrorism on, and I never felt myself as being a victim. But that was when we talked about business and public affairs and meeting people, not telling you, well, I didn't know till I'm on the stage, and then I'm like, why am I on? I'm not a victim of. Victims don't run towards the gunfire. But I met Dorothy there, and she said hi to me, but that was it. And I thought I pissed her off, because I'm like, how did I Tyrone is a father figure to me. He was the one that kept me out of trouble. He's the one that I would go in his room if I was having issues and say, Tyrone, I need somebody to talk to me and talk me down off the ledge so I don't go beat up this freaking case officer. And he was, so I had immense respect for him. But anyway, I'm glad she says that because I do. She was amazing. And I'm friends with also Tyrone's mom, still talk with Mama Cheryl as well. But the book to the movie, to answer your question, because but that made my day, bro. I'm glad you said that because that really did make my day. The book to the movie, it was, quickly, for us, it really was, because all of us kept deploying. I kept going to Yemen, and Boone kept going to Yemen. Me and Jack Silva, we went to Sana'a and worked in Sana'a. We kept working GRS. We took our normal time off, our 2 months off, 2.5, and then we flew out. Boone went to Aden, so he went to Yemen, down the Gulf of Aden, and we kept fighting the Houthis. We kept doing surveillance, doing our GRS thing against the Houthis. And then Tig went to Lebanon. And it was after about 7-8 months of watching the story just get misconstrued, and then also finding out through the grapevine that the families weren't being told the truth, that we're like, we got to do something. We can do something. We got to say something. And, and you're watching the news, and this is when the news is getting big, and it's hurting. It's kind of like, this is not the truth. This is not what happened. These memories are not getting remembered how they should. And then I remember we went and they did the stars for Ron and Bub on the CIA wall. This is what the straw that broke the camel's back. This was about, I say almost 9 months after the attack. And we went there. And I remember, first of all, when we got there, they did a passive-aggressive threat against all of us. They rushed us into a back room where we signed non-disclosures. We had already signed our non-disclosure before we went to Yemen. So we already had done that. They rushed in. They said, you guys need to sign these non-disclosures. We're like, why? Well, because we don't want you guys talking to anybody. And that's how they said it. And it was Jack. I remember Jack looked at me and he goes, these pieces of shit. He said under his breath, he goes, these pieces of shit. And I remember looked at him like, yep. And then they said, and also they said, you got to sign it because if you want to get paid back for your socks, and they didn't give us money back for our underwear, but if you want to get paid back for the stuff you lost, you need to sign this non-disclosure. And then here, now you can sign your expense sheet, so we'll pay you back. So we're not idiots. Come on. I know I'm from Kansas, but I'm not idiot. Come on. They're blackmailing us and being a passive aggressive threat. And then they went and we sat down, and I remember, if you go to that CIA front room where they do the stars, there's these pillars that are in there. Well, they put us right behind a pillar. All 4 of us were behind this. And I remember, that's when Jack, I remember looked at Jack, and I looked, and it's like, this is whole, and he's like, those motherfuckers. And it really was. We were like, I can't believe that these assholes are doing this. And we went and had a drink. We all had a drink at the Ritz there in Tyson's Corner. Went to the bar there. And we're like, what are we going to do, guys? There was a complete, literally, it was a slap in the face and a slap back. And it was, and I remember saying, I know somebody who wrote a book. And I said, if I could talk to her. I said, but I can't do it and tell her what's going on. And that's what happened. It was, but it was also a decision. Like, we need to say something. What do we do? And there was a first one like, well, let's go to talk to the news. Well, no, because no, it's not. We're going to get in trouble if we do that. We can't do that. All right, well, we could do a book. We could think about telling the story that way, at least get it out. And I remember I said, well, I do know somebody. And her name was Susan Simons. She was actually the executive producer for Wolf Blitzer. So for all you right-wing, left, she actually worked for CNN. I was friends with her. I actually protected her when she would go to Afghanistan, but she wrote a book about Eric Prince. And I just said, you know what? I called her. I said, I can't tell you what's going on. I can't tell you what I'm going to tell you. But I said, there's a story. We need some cover. We think we need to get it out there. What did you do to get your book with Eric Prince? And she got us hooked up with a clearance lawyer by the name of Mark Zaid. And that was our saving grace. That was it. He's like, you guys.
Lawyers, guys.
Yep. Lawyer up.
Coming full circle.
Lawyer up. And it just kind of steamrolled. The book agent that she had was called 3 Arts Entertainment. Again, we didn't know. I think, the Lord Works Mysterious Ways. 3 Arts is a huge Hollywood producing company, book producing. They're monstrous. They're run by a guy named Erwin Stoff, who is a legend in Hollywood. He produces tons of movies. His first agent, he was an agent to start with. His first client was Keanu Reeves, if that tells you how big this guy is. And it just fell in, and they had their ideas of what they wanted to do with the book and a movie. We did. we're naive, but we have Mark Zaid on our side. We get in there, we pitch the book, saying what we can say with our lawyer present, saying this, you can say, we can say what we can't. And we pitched it to Little Brown and Simon Schuster and Hachette, and that was a surreal experience in itself. I mean, and got picked up by Hachette. Long story short, guys, I know because we've been going long, and I'm sorry, Sean, but it got picked up by Hachette.
But this is the fascinating stuff. Like I don't know the heat that came into that moment, or the sense of injustice and frustration that was born into the process. So this is hugely educational for me. Now, my brain is going in a different direction with this because once you announced the book, there was media around that. And you hadn't written the book. It wasn't done yet, but you announced it, and there was this immediate fervor.
Yeah.
Now, what you don't know is at the exact same time that was happening, I got a phone call. And I got a phone call from a group called Relativity Pictures. Relativity made a bunch of famous movies. And it happened because when I was doing the lawyer thing after Glen died, and I'm going to try and put a bow on this thing pretty quick for us here, but I was told, hey, you need an entertainment rights lawyer. And I'm like, for what? There's no entertainment here. And it was like, oh, well, just in case someone someday wants to depict Glen or his likeness, like this could be a thing. And it was like the farthest thing from my mind. Yet, it was a thing. So I had an attorney group called K&L Gates. They were representing the estate pro bono, and they had an entertainment lawyer on staff. And so they were giving me their time for free. So I do a meeting with her, and I'll never forget, I'm in Del Mar walking around, and I'm telling her the entire Glen story. And it's probably cathartic for me. I'm just like talking about who Glen was as a person, like the kind of guy he was, the good, the bad, the ugly. Sure. And she just leaves it, and I don't talk to her for 6 months. And 6 months later, she's like, Sean, listen, I just got to tell you, I think someone wants to hear this story. I want to introduce you to a film company called Relativity Pictures and a producer named Robbie Brenner. And I don't know who Robbie Brenner is. And she's like, well, she made this movie called The Dallas Buyers Club, which won an Oscar.
Yeah, I saw it.
And it's a big deal.
I saw it.
Yeah. So I fly up, I drove up to LA from San Diego, and I sit down with her in this big, shiny office and all the things. And all of a sudden, like, I leave that meeting. I do the same meeting where I basically talk for an hour about who Glen was and how epic he was, and this, rad human, and just all the craziness. And she's like, we got to make a movie about this. And I'm like, what? And literally over the next 6 months, you guys sign a movie deal for 13 hours. Yeah. And there's this like race, and this is in the media. You can Google this shit.
I didn't know that. There was a race. I didn't know
so
that.
There was a race. I didn't know it either, but there was like these two sides that were like, and there was an article written like, who can get the movie out first? And it was Relativity Pictures versus Michael Bay and his production
Paramount,
team.
Yeah, Paramount Pictures. Yeah.
Well, Paramount won. And but Robbie Brenner hired another producer named Dana Bernetti to like direct the film. I did a meeting with Dana. They hired a writer, a guy named Matthew Sands, and they interviewed me like over and over and over again about this topic. And I gave him a list of all the guys Glen served with to talk to like learn about this. And I was like, hey guys, like the movie that they wanted to make had almost very little to do with Benghazi.
It was Glen.
It had to do with Glen's life and Tyrone's life and like their journey into that line of service, and it was probably more of a personal story. We went through all of that, and you guys had announced your movie deal. I remember reading an article that was like, which one's going to come out first? And then before they ever got to casting, they only wrote like one version of the script. Relativity Pictures filed for bankruptcy. And I got an email.
Because I was like, why would they be? Why couldn't both come out? Why would it?
Because they ran out of money. So Dana Bernetti and Robbie Brenner, who are they're famous Hollywood people, they call me, and I do a call with them like, hey man, sorry, the gig's up. We loved the story, and Dana Bernetti, he made Captain Phillips, so he knew a thing or two about making military-based films, and they're like, yeah, the gig's up, and I was like, oh, all right, well, hey, it was fun while it lasted. And then 13 Hours comes out. And that was it. Like I remember meeting, Michael Bay I got invited to a premiere down in Coronado.
Sure.
And I'll never forget that Barbara Doherty, Glen's mom, had been mad at that movie because they never sent her flowers. she's an old school lady, and she never got like permission to like, you know, use Glen's name and that. And she felt an affront on that. And I'll never forget my wife at this movie, which, by the way, for everyone who wants to watch anything about it, I will say go watch it. It is a factually kind of intensity. There's enough accuracy there that I think anyone on the outside who's curious about Benghazi can watch that and get a feel, I think, a sense of outrage, but also a feel for the heroism and what you guys went through.
And I like the family. The stuff where you would attach back to Jack and his family, and just the little nuances that you have problems at home that go on too, which it wasn't just him, it was all of us. I like that. I wish we could have put more in there, but you know, it's you can only get so much in, but getting that little bit of phone call homes and Jack's wife's pregnant, which was accurate. Jack's wife was pregnant, and him having to come over because he's got to make more money because the side job of him didn't work. And then, you know, just even talking at home and talking about, you know, how fast I'm having sex with my wife and that I'm but that's what I did. I like that. I love, you know, I love the heroism, but I did love that we get those little nuances of just the stress of just having to take the tree down. I got normal stuff that I got to worry about at home.
Yeah.
But man, I agree. I thought they did an excellent job. I didn't know that about Barbara. Now, that's horseshit, man. What's up, Paronto?
It was horseshit, but it was, you know what, they did it. I know because my wife, who was 8 months pregnant, I'll never forget, it was December of 2015, and they did this, and my wife's like, you know, she's about to explode in all the right ways, having our baby, and I have to say that right. I'm going to get crucified for that one. And she leans her stomach into Michael Bay, like leans into him, and she's like, hey, the next time you're going to make a movie about a dead guy, you might want to send the family flowers first.
Wow. Well, yeah.
And he was like, oh, like, just Heather, like, nailing this guy, like, just hammering him. And I was like, I had to pull her back. I'm like, hun. I mean, I'm more mad than she is probably, but I'm like, I'm showing restraint. She's just like in his face. I was like, this is gold.
Well, tell your wife I apologize, because that's one thing we wanted to make sure that, you know, because we did make sure Pat, we knew. I think I didn't know Barbara. I just got to know Katie when the movie was going on. I did an interview with Bub's brother, but I didn't know the fan. And there's no excuse, guys. Honestly, it's like with Pat and we knew, or like we could tell them, and that's bullshit.
Well, there's no real outrage. I got wind of it from a SEAL buddy of mine, Dan Cirillo, Taco. He called me up to let me know that it was happening, that, you know, Glen was going to be a character, that they were hoping for this kind of word. Now, he said it after the movie had wrapped, so it was late in the game, but I appreciated in hindsight that he approached me about that. And he, you know, Taco was one of my dearest friends, so, you know, knowing that, it was like, okay. And then, you know, I was like, you know, weeks later, I'm going to this movie premiere, so I was like, it's not like we had enough time to unpack it and go through a proper protocol. Sure. And it's all good afterwards. I mean, my wife said what she said. It was right, and I'll bet you Michael Bay never does that again. And every time he's making a movie about a dead guy, he's sending flowers. What I really appreciate, though, is the inspiration behind the book. And I think you just answered it, man. It was a sense of outrage, and the story was being construed wrong. And fuck that, you got to do the right thing. And I appreciate the hell out of that.
Thanks. And for those, it was none of us ever wanted to be, a public figure or to do the book so people would, it was what's the best way to do this that it doesn't get construed right or left, that we can tell everything that we have to say, and it's not going to get re-edited down to this, and we have control. It always kind of, another thing, we have some control of it. And you know, after conferring also with, which again, lawyer up, after conferring with Mark Zaid, it was like, yeah, guys, this is the best way to do it. And this is the best way I can protect you. And to me, that was the key there. But having the control of, I'm going to say what I have to say, and I'm going to be part of the editing process, which we're all going to have part of the editing and at the final product goes out, we get our stamp of approval. And that was the okay we were given. So it was like, okay, well, let's do it. But it was hard because it was, after the non-disclosures, it was like, okay, well, what are they going to do to us? Mark, can we do this? He's like, I got you, man. We'll make sure it's right. And it was a fight, a little bit of a fight process with the review board to get it out, get it done, because they wanted to change a lot of it.
Yeah, redact this, and it's like it's horse shit, but I mean, it all came out in the wash, and now it's immortalized. And I think that's the big thank you, is like your career in public speaking, your media sort of awareness, the podcast, like those things, like they were like that happened, right? It is what it is. I think you've done the most honorable way to celebrate that. And for anyone, again, listening, we're going to do a little outro where you can learn more about Kris, not just his vodka, which I look forward to grabbing a bottle of for those rare occasions I decide to have a drink, but also for learning more about the movie, learning more about the book, learning more about the speaking engagements, learning more about life. That wouldn't have happened if you guys hadn't gotten pissed off and done the right thing. Yeah. And I mean, trust me, I know a thing or two about that, because when Glen was denied his death benefit, I got real pissed off, and then you got an opportunity, hopefully, to do the right thing, and you did. So it's one of the reasons I love talking with you. Even though we talk about stuff that gets us riled up sometimes, this is one of the good ones. So
it does, but it's a good energy. It's a positive energy that makes, that's why we keep it going, man. It's not anger energy like it used to be. And that's one thing that's changed. Yep. Yes, sir.
No. So that being said, seriously, thank you for joining us today and talking about this. And thank you for writing the book. And thank you for making the movie. And thank you for lawyering up on a number of occasions to have a successful vodka brand called Tanto. And for having the podcast that we get to partner with you on, which I love. Because it all boils down.
I know you can't see it in the picture here, but I got Bubs up there. I do. You just can't dang see it, man. Come on, man. That's always got it up there. Old school Bubs under the lid. Because that was where we started out. That was the first tub I ever got. Guys, that's the first tub I ever got from you guys. Man. Sorry about that. I'll come back. Sorry about that.
That's good stuff. So listen, tell us a little bit about, if people want to learn more about kind of what you're up to these days, where can they find you? Like, what's your website? Like, give them a home to go to, social media, all the good stuff.
Just go to KrisTanoParonto.com, and that's just everything. But it's got the Battle Line podcast, which I do with Ian Scotto, which, again, thank you guys for helping us with that. We wouldn't still have it if it wasn't for you. You've been one of our main sponsors, man, and it's tremendous. And dude, come on, I'm getting that stuff back. That collagen and the MCT oil, it's bad. And the Fountain of Youth, man, I have never. That Fountain of Youth will make you feel good, guys. I'm telling you. Yeah. Take it. But the Battle Line podcast with Ian, we get that. We do everything from military to rock to just. It's mostly military and rock guys. But we had Pablo Schreiber on a few months ago too, so we'll get some Hollywood guys on every once in a while. And then the Real Tano vodka, which we're getting to California, working on that right now. But of course, when this comes out, we'll already be at Specs in Texas. We're in Kansas. We're in Colorado, and doing well on that. And that's got to do that with my Ranger buddy Ben Morgan. And then of course, we've got all the books and movies and things that people still want, which is great. I love it because they're keeping that memory alive. And that is one thing that Richard Abate at 3 Arts told me when he was trying to sell me to let's do the book. It was like, Rich, I don't know. He goes, you know what? The money and all that you're going to get off this, that will be, he was honest. He goes, that's going to be gone. He says, I know it looks like a lot, but it's going to be gone. He's been in Hollywood forever. He goes, you know why this is important? And he's trying to sell me on it. But this story, because it's Paramount, because it's Michael Bay, because it's us, 3 Arts, it is going to be just what you said, immortalized forever, and it will never go away. And people are going to remember Tyrone and Bub even more so, and they're going to be even greater heroes as the years go on. And he was right. He's right. And so that is huge. So, if you want to pick up a movie on my website, I'll sign it for you. I'll chub it for you if you want me to. Just ask. And watch the movie, you guys can know what I mean by chubbing it. But that's on the website too. And then Battle Line Tactical. I have a ton of these shirts. That's my firearms training company. And I get out there and shoot with y'all. We do tactical training, anywhere from firearms, vehicle defense, vehicle attack, CQB, AR, anything you want to do, pistol. And I'm also a licensed concealed carry instructor here in Kansas. So if you're in Kansas, I can get you certified to carry concealed. That's it.
There we go. This has been epic. I really appreciate it.
Thanks,
I know,
brother.
Again, you and I could go for hours and hours. And this is the good stuff. This is what we're here for, is to team up, and we're going to be working together for years to come. And,
yes,
whether we're talking about what it's like to run miles in our 50s or, still get after it with some weights and some CrossFit, like whatever it is, we're not slowing down.
Never.
And I love that. So part of our outro here, as always, thanks for listening. You can find the Cult of Recreationalism, I should learn how to say that better, on all podcasting services. And don't forget to check us out on YouTube and our social media. That's at Bubs Naturals. Just look up Bubs Naturals and you'll find us. And hey, maybe leave a thumbs up, like a 5-star, whatever platform you're on. Every positive review helps, and thank you.